without me, or in ecstasy, and I'm left wondering. You push, you beg me to feel it, I push.
3, 2, 1, and we're live. ESP 012. I think we're a go now.
Wait, so did the first intro not count?
Oh, the first intro counted, but
Okay.
with the magic of editing,
So
we are
people
going to make it work. Actually, that 30 seconds of silence is just a multimedia thing.
Oh no, I
Helps
just
to
didn't
filter
know
out
if the
the
people at
noise.
home were going to hear me scratching the mic.
No, that we can actually cut out,
Wow.
thankfully.
They're lost.
I know, right? You scratch.
I mean, I could hear it on my end. It had like a little whistling noise. It was that bad.
I have a job for you.
Okay.
You need to say something interesting, tag yourself, and set up our Facebook Live feed.
Okay. How
While
come
we
I
do
get
that-
this job? I'm the guest.
Because you're almost a co-host now.
I know. Have I been on this show more than anyone else?
Actually, you know what? I take that back. You have. I believe you are our most seasoned guest. I'll take that back. So I am going to...
I just wrote the letter H.
H. Oh.
Just go live with the letter H.
Just go, yeah, that's it. Just go live with the letter H. So we're going to lead in with an ESP 012 Special Edition Trans Political Updates.
Finally.
Yes, and then we're also going to get into Gobekli Tepe, which is going to be a segue into a very specific retro game. And then the rest of the show is going to be retro gaming, officially all retro gaming. We're going to go mostly PS1 games, I think.
I mean, I think that's fair. Gaming in the 90s in particular was very, very open-ended and Wild West. I feel that's more so with the PlayStation. And I mean, you're also seeing the end of like the console wars with Sega being the first casualty.
There's a lot of this.
Eh.
For anyone that's just listening, we were sort of doing robotic blocky motions.
Right. We are living up tank movements right now.
Tank movements, I love it.
Mm.
So we're going to start with a political update regarding the trans community. I think this is more local, so Massachusetts, New England.
Right. So
Correct?
This is really for the people who are here to hear me. Like
Right.
this is why
This is
why
for
you're all
Jordan's
here.
fans. You don't have any national updates, right? This is all mostly local.
Right. This is
Okay,
all
perfect.
mostly local.
So I'm going to go live on our Facebook while you do that. This is only going to take about 30 seconds. So my apologies for being rude and looking
Oh no,
at
it's
my
fine. I can
phone.
talk forever if given the chance.
But this is going to allow us to pop in and say hello to our Facebook audience.
Oh,
So,
also don't forget
take it
our
away.
Twitter fans. Well, your Twitter fans.
Twitter fans I actually didn't contact because I don't have my tablet, but
Oh,
Tumblr was contacted.
oh, excellent.
Hopefully they remember the links. Actually,
I'm sure.
the link to the show is on the banner for my Tumblr. So if you see the advertisement via the selfie that we just took for our podcast and can't figure out that it's literally the banner of my page, but then again, some people just see the update in the feed.
Right,
But
they're
anyone
here
that
just to
clicks
look
on my
at
page,
really just look at us.
yeah, the
Let's be
links
real.
the links are there.
So yeah, I figured this is a good opportunity to kind of just discuss where we are in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts regarding the trans community. Admittedly, there is a lot that could be said about the state of everything on a national level, but for a lot of people, everything that's been happening here in Massachusetts is obviously going to impact them far more quickly, far more directly. Now, as you know, the ballot question that has been a point of contention since Governor Baker signed the transgender anti-discrimination law into
Yes.
effect finally has a number, and the questions are finally given aside. Now,
Deval Patrick also signed an executive order in 2016, correct?
no, that was
Protecting-
2011,
2011.
I believe.
Okay.
2016 was Governor Baker. Deval Patrick was long
Ooh,
since gone.
Good for Baker.
Where have you been? Do you even listen to me?
No.
Your most favorite guest.
Of course I do, Jordan. There's
Um,
just so much information that I'm constantly processing with all of our different guests.
that's all right. I'm a living Wikipedia engine.
Okay.
So
Exactly. That's why you're here, to refresh my... I'm just kidding. But I might need a refresher every once in a while.
oh, it's fine.
And I might just say, refresh my memory on such and such.
Oh, it's fine. That's what I'm here for.
political whatever it is.
That's what I'm here for.
Bills, legislature.
That's why
drives,
people can't
fundraisers.
stand long car rides with me. Eventually, it just devolves into me reciting various
politics.
bill numbers and facets of information about them. So, here in Massachusetts, the question of whether or not we are going to preserve the gender identity anti-discrimination law that has been in effect since 2016 will be officially question number 3 on the November ballot.
Question number 3. Vote yes on 3.
Thank you. That's the
Affirm
next
our
thing.
rights. Vote yes on 3.
That's the next point of interest, was that for the longest time, we weren't sure if it was going to be a vote yes or a vote no. The way it was going in, I think once earlier when I've been a guest on your show, I said it was a no vote. That's since changed. Initially, when the signatures to repeal the law were collected, my understanding of the question, which was also reinforced by Ballotpedia's understanding of the question. And if you've never heard of Ballotpedia, it's a fantastic nonprofit organization dedicated on tracking every political race across the country, statewide.
Give us that name one more time.
Ballotpedia.
Ballotpedia.
Ballotpedia, fantastic organization. I advise you to check them out. They talk a lot about elections, judicial policy, regular policy after the elections are over and things have been signed and brought into effect and things like that. It's just a great resource. But even Ballotpedia was reporting on it as no being the way to vote if you wanted to preserve the law. That has since changed. A yes vote is officially a vote to preserve the current law. A no vote would be the vote to repeal the current law. Obviously,
which is confusing, and I think that was the point.
Right.
Opposition.
Because going into this, you have an organization that was collecting signatures to repeal the law. So reasonably, you would think that, well, voting yes would be voting yes with this organization that wants to repeal the law. Voting no would be voting no against this organization. That is, in fact, not the case. But there also is some other information that I wanted to kind of use this moment to talk about regarding the ballot question as well. Now, for the longest time, we were living...
another photo for a Tumblr because I made a mistake with the Tumblr feed. So,
oh yeah, do you
continue.
Okay.
Just because the Tumblr feed will not work without a photo, so you have to submit some kind of a photo. So
sure, no problem. Right.
Figured I would at least put my best pose into it.
Work it, girl.
Okay.
So
yes, my apologies. Continue.
So, on the topic of the question, we have been living in an absolute black hole when it came to polling data on this. And if anyone knows me, I am a huge polling nerd. I stand for polls. I love the data. I love the crosstabs. Show me the crosstabs. I don't want pictures. I want Spider-Man. But since then, there has been... I think we've been looking at 2 polls since the last one done in 2016. Maybe 3 at this point, from a couple different organizations. And this is very useful because it has given us an understanding of where we are at the moment with the question. And if you dig deep into the crosstabs, there is some fascinating data to be pulled from it. In particular, and I talked about this on my Twitter in some detail, and I'll try and give an abridged version now. But looking back at the polls from 2016, you had the question being, I believe the question was, would you support a law that would allow someone to use a restroom or facility consistent with their gender identity? And if memory serves, it was 52% in favor of such a law, 30% opposed to such a law. So that kind of set us up where they're going with the question. It kind of gave us a base level to start with. And since then, the next poll that came out, which was earlier this year, flipped it on its head insofar as it was asking, would you support repealing the law that did the aforementioned, or would you oppose repealing a law that did the aforementioned? So I had to kind of flip the data to get there. But, oh no, I mean, polling firms do that all the time, but It was also a different polling agency, so the crosstabs weren't necessarily the same in how they did their tables. In the first one's tabulations, they were looking at a slew of information: party affiliation, age demographics, levels of education. Do you want to get a photo? Is that what you're doing?
No, this is just a live feed.
Okay.
I'm giving it to you to
okay.
strategically place in the location of your choosing.
Oh.
Probably where
right.
the tablet usually goes.
I feel bad for the people who are listening right now because I just keep talking about what polls are and how they work and not at all anything about what they want to hear. I'll just scooch closer to you.
Perfect.
So, to round up my point, I tried to parse the data the best that I could so it would be as consistent as possible. And in some of the newer polls that came out, they were done the same way as that first poll was done. So looking at that, what I found particularly interesting was that support for preserving this anti-discrimination law pertaining to gender identity has waned a little bit from those voters who identify with the Democratic Party.
So this is interesting. So why? That makes absolutely zero sense to me. Do we have any speculation as to why, or
there's a couple reasons. And if you look in the tabulations, the why.
Good word. I forgot to do my eyebrows, by the way. I just noticed.
Oh, you look fine. The why, as far as I'm concerned, is to be found in the age demographics. You're seeing a lot of, and I don't mean anything bad by this, but you're seeing a lot of people who fall under the boomer generation, who tend to be kind of solidifying in opposition at the moment to preserving the anti-discrimination law, whereas you see a lot of people who kind of fall in with the millennial generation and with the Gen Y generation lining up behind preserving the anti-discrimination law. Amusingly, if you go further past the boomer generation...
Wait a minute. Say that one more time, because I think... So the
older Gen Y and millennials.
The older generation of boomers is... They want to allow discrimination, or they're against discrimination?
Boomers want to repeal the anti-discrimination law.
Okay. Boomers want to repeal the
anti-discrimination law. At least a majority
law.
of boomers. It's something like...
Including Democratic baby boomers?
Well, you asked why I think that there has been a cooling of support from voters who identify with the Democratic Party.
Okay.
And that would be my first guess, because when you consider how many people identify as Democrats in the Commonwealth and how many people identify as unenrolled/independent voters, which is the next largest block that has been cooling, the sheer number, and it wouldn't take much to make that big of a difference, but the sheer number of just even a small handful falling firmly on one side versus another would cause that kind of sway. Though amusingly, if you go past the boomers into the generation even before that, they tend to be in favor of preserving the anti-discrimination law. So there's some really interesting data to be had from that. And to go a step further and look on the opposite side at Republican support for keeping the anti-discrimination law
in Massachusetts.
Massachusetts.
Okay, so we're talking about
all
Massachusetts. Okay. I was going to say, I feel like this doesn't hold up in other states, especially more red states.
You'd be surprised if you actually dig into the data. But here in Massachusetts, Republican support for preserving the anti-discrimination law has doubled. And
wow,
the most recent poll...
Partly thanks to you, I think. You've been really hitting the ground with that.
I'm not going to take credit for that.
I think you can take a little bit of credit. That photo of you at CPAC, really it went as viral as it could be.
I'm a CPAC party crasher. I'm there. I've been there for a few years in a row now. They're getting bored with me. I can tell.
CPAC party crasher, I like that.
Well, no, I won't take credit. And if you are going to give me credit, in fairness, we also have to give a number of other Republican legislators credit as well, because there are a number of Republican legislators on Beacon Hill right now.
Again, unique to Massachusetts. So far. Maybe we can change that.
Massachusetts insofar as there's a noticeably large number of them that are actively meeting with people and trying to change hearts and minds. But there are a number of Republicans who are okay with trans people. What a concept. And of those that have leadership positions or elected positions are using their positions to reach new people and have conversations that others may not necessarily be able to do as easily.
So you're saying it's mostly the baby boomer generation and Generation Y that is sort of has some sort of a stigma against trans folks?
No, Gen Y and the millennial generation. And you know what? I actually wonder, what would Gen Y be, the millennial generation? There was a bit of, I think it might be Gen Z. I'm sorry, Gen Z in the millennial generation. I think Gen Y actually.
So I haven't encountered.
Gen Y, I think, is us because of Y2K.
Right.
So it's Gen Z in the millennial generation. My apologies for earlier. Obviously, we want to preserve the anti-discrimination law as a whole, as a demographic. Baby boomers at the moment want to see it repealed as a whole, as a demographic. And
why?
Well, there's a number of reasons.
Doesn't make any sense. Well,
no, I mean, there are a number of reasons, and it differs by the individual, but depending on where they get their source of information about trans people from. Obviously, younger generations are living in the moment as this is all happening. Right. They're growing up, and they're meeting, and they're getting to know trans people and queer people in general, our community in general. They're getting to know them on a personal level, and they're getting to hear our stories and our experiences. And that's a big way of genuinely changing someone's hearts and minds, or rather, from the get-go, showing them that, well, these are people just like us, because we are all the same. Just because someone has a different sexual orientation or a gender identity that's different from the identity that they were assigned at birth doesn't make them any different than someone who would identify as cishet.
And that's the rational way of thinking.
Right. But with the boomer generation, these are people who have been experienced to decades where this wasn't the case. So some of these people have these notions and these understandings of the community that are either dated or just outright incorrect. And that's not their fault at all either. That's just they're a product of when they grew up. They're a product of the information that they received when they were growing up and their experiences as well. And that's why it's also harder to kind of reach this demographic. And also very important, very crucial that we reach boomers, because they are the ones who had these experiences growing up that made them feel and make them vote the way they do now. And we have to overcome that by reaching out to them and being prepared to have the awkward conversations and the patience needed to kind of address their concerns and their misconceptions that they have about our community.
So how do we open these dialogues, though? What's the best way to open dialogues with boomers? Because there's not that many of us in the community. We exist in small pockets throughout the world, but it's a matter of how do we engage with professional, because not every trans person is professional in the way that, I mean, because we're trying to think of how to say this, because we're just like everyone else. We really are.
Right.
We're not special or unique. We just are. We just happen to be trans. Trans does not define us. So that being said, there are individuals who are trans, who are just not good with public speaking, who are not good with communicating.
There are individuals who are cisgendered, who are cis, who are not good with public speaking and all that. I mean, it's an innate human trait to sometimes be terrible at public speaking.
My point is that not every trans person is going to be an ideal candidate to go out and reach out to communicate with the individuals that have a stigma regarding the LGBTQIA or the trans community. So that being said, it's not a matter of just finding the trans people in your community, because the trans person or people that you may find in your community, whether they're male to female, female to male, non-binary, gender non-conforming, anything in the spectrum, they might not be the best candidate to speak with.
And that's okay.
So how do we get the individuals within the trans community that are professionally trained in communication or that are just naturally talented with communication? How do we get those individuals to go out and do outreach, or the individuals who have formal training in either politics or the public or public service or academics and communication to go out and outreach with these people?
Well, it doesn't necessarily need to fall on just our community to do the outreach. I mean, that's why we have allies. the people who we
and
have
the
been-
allies. That's correct.
the people who we have been making connections with and have been getting to know along the way. As an ally, please, if you see something like this taking place, if you see casual and not so casual transphobia, casual and not so casual homophobia, as an ally, we need you to also address it in the moment as well.
Yes,
Like,
this
we need
is
you
great.
To speak
Thank
up.
you.
I mean, it's very important that your allyship doesn't just end with what happens between you and a friend who happens to be a member of the queer community. Your allyship also must continue once your friend is no longer around, when it's you and a bunch of your other friends who happen to also be cisgender, heterosexual individuals.
So a lot of it comes down to the allies.
Right. The allies are going to play a big role. The trans community, obviously, we're going to share the majority of the burden. We are going to shoulder pretty much most of this going forward. And for those of us who don't want to be put out in the open, you shouldn't feel like you need to be put out into the open. I want to make that clear right now.
That's true as well.
That we shouldn't force
Exactly,
people
which is the other part of my point.
Right. We shouldn't force people who don't want to be taking this kind of front page
Exactly.
role to do that if that's not something they feel comfortable with.
Exactly.
There are plenty of us who are able to get involved and take that role, but they also may have skills that could be extremely useful elsewhere.
That's true too.
And those people who don't feel comfortable doing something a bit more public, by all means, if you have a skill and you want to get involved with something like preserving your basic rights, use that skill that you
And
have
vote.
in the best way you can.
And vote this November.
Well, obviously,
Vote
voting
yes
voting
on 3.
is very important. We should
Affirm
always
our
vote,
rights.
no matter where you stand on any issue.
And thank you to
You need to
Lizbeth
vote.
for coming on the show and talking about this as well.
Right. You know what? I'm so jealous
thank
that
you
you
to
got
Jordan.
to talk to Lizbeth.
It was fun.
I only talked to her on social media. I don't think we've ever actually met in person.
Really?
Yeah, we
didn't know
talk
that.
on social media, but I
thought you were like sort of contacting on the reg as far as politics and things like that were confirmed.
I talked to Jackie Ryan
Concerned.
pretty frequently.
Talk to who?
Jackie Ryan.
How did you get in with Blair White on Facebook?
All right, I knew you were going to bring this up. I literally just added Blair, and then she accepted. There's no like super mystery to that.
Some of her videos are really funny.
Well, she does.
Some of
She
them
has
are
a
really
good
good.
personality for.
Some of her views are not good, but some of them are.
Some of my views are terrible, I'm
Yeah.
sure.
I disagree with her on a lot of things, but there's some things that I listen to her and I respect her for what she does.
Well, I mean, like I said, anyone
It
who
takes a lot of
puts themselves out
guts,
there.
it takes a lot of courage to boldly declare your views, confidently declare your
Right.
views.
But she's doing
on
something
social
that
media.
she feels comfortable and confident doing. I had
She's
asked
not
her.
Tommy Lahren. Tommy Lahren is just.
We are
ugh.
going all over the place with this now.
Well, because we think of confident, beautiful women that are members of the. Well, I don't see members of the GOP that are conservative in their views.
That's the thing. Blair does something that she's good at, and she does it well. I had asked Blair in one of our live chats in the past, do you ever see yourself...
chatted with her as well?
Well, it was like a big group thing.
Wow.
I'm not... Trust me, I'm not that
Look at you.
notable outside of
We need
Massachusetts.
to consider a segue soon, too, as well.
We will. I mean, you took me so far off base. I want to get back to like
Yeah.
polling
No,
for like
this is great.
20
This
more
is a great
seconds. I
political
promise. But I do want to just finish up that Blair bit by saying I had asked her in one of her big group live chats that she has with her viewers. Would you ever consider running for office? Is electoral politics something you see in your future? And that's something she does not want to do. At the time, she said she was completely uninterested and that wasn't her thing. And I think that's a good example of someone doing something that they enjoy and that they're good at for a cause that they believe in while not doing something that may also be useful, but they wouldn't necessarily have the same passion to do. And I think that's important going forward, that if you want to help out, as I said, do something that you are passionate about and that you think can help. Don't just, force yourself to do things if you think you're not going to be an adequate resource or you're going to do it passionately. There are people out there, my friends in Freedom for All, Massachusetts, who are canvassing every weekend, doing the really hard, gritty stuff of just knocking on doors as proudly
Freedom for All
open trans
Massachusetts.
people and
That's
allies.
good. We need more of that.
Right,
More
but
grassroots, more door-to-door.
they are out there
More
and they are
promotion.
doing this
More
really
shows like this.
terrible
if you
work.
podcast, if you're trans or an ally, you are involved with social media, multimedia go out there and get your voice heard.
Freedom, they're doing all of this really gritty grassroots stuff. And you shouldn't feel like, well, if you can do it, you should definitely join them and help out.
Yes.
They are always looking for more people, but don't force yourself, because there are always venues for you to use your skills to be very effective in helping their mission. Reach out to them, see what else they need, get involved with like data entry, or as a faith leader, or as someone who is completely ready to do like phone banking. I mean, canvassing is just one of those things where you have to be confident with going to someone's house and knocking on their door and then pitching a cause. But if that doesn't sound fun to you, phone banking, faith leading, data entry, op-ed writing, there's so much you can do, and you should get involved if this is a cause that you find worthwhile. Yes. And as trans women, we find it extremely worthwhile.
Yes. Vote yes on 3. Vote yes on 3.
Anyway, to finish off this segment, because I know we want to like transition into the next one, the Republican Party in Massachusetts. Last time I checked the polls, we had it was a 15-point uptick in support for the anti-discrimination law.
Perfect.
Like we are looking at 41%.
Did you get this off of your sources or from the poll?
Oh, this was through WBOR.
Okay. What was the poll said again? One more time.
Well, this WBOR, the most recent one, this one I believe was consistent with the one asked all the way back in 2016 that asked, "Do you support keeping the gender identity anti-discrimination law?" Like that was a yes to keep it, no to scrap it. And for identified Republican voters, 41% were in favor of keeping it. 41% were in favor of scrapping it. That's extremely good for a Republican Party in a state. And I think we need to kind of foster that. And we need to reach out to those supporters.
Yes, I agree.
Both on a grassroots level, on a party leadership level, and on an elected level, and be there for them as well. I mean, obviously, this is kind of like my thing. This is why I do what I do in my line of work. But when there are Republicans who do that and who stick themselves out there and who fight the good fight for full equality and freedom, they need to be supported. They need to be reinforced. We need to let them know that if they're going to do this, we're going to have their backs when people come for them for supporting this. Because this is going to be the kind of thing where we need a very broad and diverse coalition to win. It's one thing to squeak out a win only to have it attacked by another group a few months later, like what's happening now. And it's a completely different thing to have a broad coalition that supports it across the board, which makes it not just a one-time win, but something that lasts forever.
Perfect.
And now we can talk about your other thing.
Yes on 3. So we're going to go as long as we can about retro gaming now.
I know. What do we have left for time?
So Tomb Raider. So I first played Tomb Raider.
So sad.
You'll usually be... I think we might be able to go until 6:30. I first played Tomb Raider at BJ's. Did you ever go to BJ's as a kid and they had the TV set up? You could go in and you could play the PS1 games on the TVs at BJ's.
Can't say I
Walmart
have.
even.
Can't say I have.
So that's when I first played Tomb Raider.
When I was growing up, my interest was far more vested in active time battle system games. So your Final Fantasies and your Parasite Eve, which, I mean, Aya's pretty badass and she can liberate her mitochondria and take the form of like something so great. Eve is really just like igniting people via their mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell.
And the whole game was just, I mean, to see her just use this strength and...
Right. Well, I kind of relate with Aya a lot.
It's been a long time, though.
I relate with her.
I've played or seen the game played.
Well, the game is so memorable for a few reasons.
I did watch the entire thing, though, play out.
It's not a long game on purpose, for the record. The game itself was a foray into... it was made to be watched. There was gameplay, obviously, but because of the content and the cutscenes, it was made to be enjoyed just as much as someone who was watching it, as much as someone could get from playing it.
Yeah, it didn't feel like watching someone play a video game. Everyone was engrossed watching our friend play it.
It was, I mean, there was a lot.
That makes a lot of sense now.
Right. I mean, there's so much to be parsed from that game, too. I always related with, I never know whether to call her Aya or Aya. I think it's technically Aya because her sister was Maya, so it must be Aya. Oh, God. I always related with Aya because for the entirety of the game, she just has no idea what's going on. Like, half of her dialogue is just like, what? I'm confused. What is happening? And I relate with her on that a lot. But the game itself was very, very unique. The engine that the game used for combat was this combination of the kind of free range movement that you saw in other games. So let's say not quite Tomb Raider. Definitely not. Tomb Raider was completely interactive. That was kind of combining almost these not quite tankish elements of Resident Evil with the active time roll or turn-based combat of a Final Fantasy game into an extremely unique battle system. And I think the battle system is underappreciated. I'm looking to find other games that kind of utilize a system like that. Some people told me to check out Vagrant Story, but I haven't. There was another game that came out in the 90s around then as well, but I never really got into it. Yeah, there was a couple others as well. I think Ark the Lad utilized that system. I loved Ark the Lad, but it wasn't quite the same. Like Ark the Lad was you moved around the field, and then when you wanted to engage in an action in a turn-based combat, you had a range of movement or a range of accuracy and reach. You set the commands you wanted to do, and you could line it up so you hit multiple targets. But at the same time, there was something Ark the Lad. There was something so unique about Parasite Eve and the way they did it that I haven't been able to find something quite like it yet. Admittedly, I also might be incredibly soft on Parasite Eve, and I mentioned this to you when coming in here, but it's because the game is pretty much the scrapped bits and pieces of Final Fantasy VII, and I've always been a huge fan of Final Fantasy
doesn't
series.
Really make too much sense to me, given the story of Final Fantasy VII.
Well, the original Final Fantasy VII was so completely different than what the final product was. When they first wanted to create Final Fantasy VII, the image that they had in their mind was something based in the city of New York, where a private investigator type character is going about, the storyline. So they wanted those elements, and they ended up doing something so completely different. I mean, it is set in a metropolitan city for a big chunk of the game, and I guess you could say Clyde was a soldier of some kind. Not quite a private eye, but like a disenfranchised soldier. But the parts of it that they couldn't use, so this whole notion of it being set in New York, Aya as a rookie officer for the New York PD, and this very real world feel, with the exception of the mitochondria revolting, which for those who don't know, the game is about the mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell, just being fed up because technically they were parasitic organisms that our early cells had a symbiotic relationship with that then incorporated into our cells. So mitochondria, and this is real, mitochondria, they have their own DNA, but they reproduce with our cells. So the premise of Parasite Eve, and mind you, it's not accurate. There's a lot of flaws. But the premise is that the mitochondria are finally tired of dealing with humanity's shtick. So they just they revolt. Wow. They evolve very quickly. They essentially...
I don't remember any of this.
They use the role as the powerhouse of the cell to pretty much cause people to spontaneously combust by overheating them. And they mutate other creatures. And that was like the mythical aspect of Parasite Eve. They didn't have magic either, like Final Fantasy did. You had parasite powers because you played...
That sounds familiar.
You played Aya Bray, who, as I mentioned, is this, at the time, a 25-year-old New York Police Department rookie. And
it's always the rookie.
Right. Like...
Classic trope.
There are so many played tropes in the game, but it's still so fun. And yeah, the entire premise is that you're trying to figure out what's going on. You have no idea what's going on. Everything's confusing. My general feel of Aya is she's probably miserable without
father
mitochondria.
Or something turn into one of the main villains. Father of...
Not quite. No. In Parasite Eve,
father, right? Maybe it's Parasite Eve 2?
Parasite...
Somebody's father, or that was a scientist, turned into one of the main
That's a
demons.
Resident Evil trope. And yes, because Resident Evil had one of the...
No, it was Parasite Eve.
No, that was Resident Evil, because one of the scientists injected himself with the G virus,
Right.
and then had 5 different mutated forms.
Well, that much I remember, but it was someone's in Parasite Eve. It was
Yeah,
someone's father.
no, he was the father in Resident Evil. You're thinking of Resident Evil. The scientist was the father. He mutated himself. He then tried to impregnate his daughter, so they would have like this terrible G virus offspring baby. Resident Evil, another terribly horrific game that came out of the 90s. Also extremely fun to this day if you like terrible camera angles and hard to use controllers, but good storyline.
Was really good.
GameCube. Well, when you say Resident Evil for GameCube, which game did you play?
Resident Evil for GameCube.
Was it a remake of the original?
Yes.
All right, so they probably fixed the camera and the controller controls. The original one for PlayStation when it came out was so bad that the largest complaint people had with it, like the reason why some people just stopped playing it, was because of the controls. But it was such a good game that it still caught on. I finally got into it when Resident Evil 4 came out because that was very fun. The controllers didn't give me a migraine. Or the controls didn't give me a migraine, rather.
I did get Parasite Eve and Resident Evil confused, I guess.
That's okay. There are similar elements to both.
Yeah.
With one being a virus, the other one just being straight up mitochondria.
One thing I remember very clearly, though, was DINO CRISIS, which we'll get to after.
Oh, DINO CRISIS, yes. So, yeah, let me just finish up on Parasite Eve, and then we can jump to DINO CRISIS. But, yeah, so there was a parental aspect to Parasite Eve, but that was mitochondrial Eve. So, another real life science fact for you, but all women share a mitochondrial common ancestor. And the game tried to play up that fact by being like, well, you know, Eve is trying to, and spoiler alert for a game that came out 21 years ago, but Eve is trying to have the ultimate being.
Hashtag lashback. That's okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Eve is trying to have the ultimate being, as it's referred to in the game, which is a creature that is like pure mitochondria, free of paternal mitochondria. Because I guess paternal figures, so the fathers, they have mitochondria that's, I guess you could say it's tainted. It's different. And in the lore of the game, that different mitochondria is able to prevent humanity from getting totally wiped out. So Eve tries to have a baby using manufactured spermatozoa.
Ah, yes, this is sounding more familiar now.
And then you end up with like this terribly horrifying looking, almost humanoid creature that has.
That's what it was. Okay,
and you fight it above a tank. You fight it aboard a tanker.
Yes.
And yeah.
And an elevator, right?
Well, the elevator is actually. That was the secret boss. If you're thinking of the Chrysler Building,
it was like a big elevator. Just you were on the elevator for most of the boss fight, and then on a train, maybe. Not that one.
I mean, in Parasite Eve, you're not on a train. You're on a carriage at one point fighting Eve, and you're not on an elevator. You're in the Chrysler Building fighting the true purebred. But
maybe that's what it was.
I mean, it was. I'm gonna make you replay it. How about that?
Yeah, definitely. You should.
But I know you really want to get to DINO CRISIS. So
oh my god, one of the best games of all time, ever.
Now, refresh my memory on this one. DINO CRISIS, that had an arcade component to it, right?
An arcade component?
Right. Or am I thinking of?
I don't believe so. No, it was.
So it was never released in the arcades as well.
I don't think so. DINO CRISIS was Resident Evil with dinosaurs.
Yeah, that much I knew. I swear I remember playing a game like that in the arcades, and that was the only place I played it.
It was the most fun I've ever had in a video game to this day. It was everything I've ever wanted in a video game, ever. And people have been begging for a remake of DINO CRISIS forever. I think there's finally now some rumblings that we might get one at some point.
Be careful what you wish for, because they've remade other games and they've been terrible.
Well, hopefully the Final Fantasy VII one is good, because it's taking a long time.
Oh god, it's going to be terrible.
Resident Evil 2 remake, big news. So now I'm just waiting for the DINO CRISIS remake. Because it was you break into the facility, you fly in by chopper, you break into the facility, it starts at night. The facility, it's basically Jurassic Park that you break into. There's a lot of similarities to the architecture and the structures in Jurassic Park while maintaining its own unique identity.
Mm-hmm.
The dinosaurs are incredible. The T-Rex when the T-Rex crashes through the building and is chasing you through the building, and then its head pops in.
I do remember that one.
Correctly.
Actually, I do remember that.
That is incredible. And then the Velociraptor that jumps through the glass that you think is just standing there, and then it was the one-way glass.
Oh, one-way glass.
There's this amazing scene, one of the most iconic scenes in video game history.
That exists in Resident Evil too.
Right. Yeah,
spooky.
it's one-way glass, but in DINO CRISIS.
Wait, was it Resident Evil that was in, or was that Silent Hill?
It's Capcom, so they pretty much just did a reskin of
Yeah,
Resident
you know what?
Evil,
It's probably Resident
with
Evil.
dinosaurs.
Just for that knowledge alone. Because there's a scene, yeah, where you're like just walking by in Resident Evil, and you know something's going to jump out of it, and it does. So, yeah, I could see that taking place because of it being a Capcom game.
Yeah.
But no, you know what? I
lot of the
do
same
remember
tropes.
playing DINO CRISIS.
Crawling under the fence, I'll never forget that too. That was they actually, if you crawl under the fence, you were safe for a little bit. So that was
I
nice.
loved vintage retro game elements like that. Oh, if you
Yeah.
crawl under the fence, you're safe. Oh no, there's a
Next
gate.
area.
I can't cross it. Gotta find a whole new path around it. I mean, I have a key, but
And there were compies too. There were compies. There were raptors. No, but a Velociraptor definitely crashed through one-way glass at some point in the game, and scared the bejeebus out of me. I'll never forget that.
I can picture the game.
The
It was
raptor
very
just
brightly colored.
jumps. Yeah. And then you're in the helicopter, and then you're shooting dinosaurs with RPGs, and you have heavy machine guns and semi-automatics and little pistols, and you're finding ammo and key cards, and you're solving puzzles. It's just incredible.
I mean, you could do a whole episode dedicated to 90s games for the
Oh, yeah.
PS1. I mean,
Final Fantasy VIII, do you love it or hate it?
Final Fantasy VIII, I loved.
Oh,
I mean,
really?
I prescribed to the theory that
Good
Squall
for you.
died after the first
That's
the
right,
first
yeah,
disc.
you did mention that.
Right, like
It's an
after
interesting
Squall gets
theory.
impaled by
Love it.
Adia. Spoiler alert for a game that's 20 years old.
I know, right?
After Squall gets impaled by her ice limit, allegedly he just dies because everything else that happens from that disc on is completely different. All of a sudden, Renoa is much more into Squall as like the princess being into the knight trope. The monsters are less realistic and more Final Fantasy based mythical, and magic is more prevalent. So it's a theory that I think Square officially said, nah, it's not legit, but I want to
Okay.
believe just because of how much sense it makes,
Right.
and it makes the gameplay much like more enjoyable for me.
Crazy fan theories.
I mean, the junction system was extremely creative too, and I liked that because it took a traditional way of doing turn-based combat and kind of flipped the script.
Once you got used to it, it was awesome. I'm like,
Right.
yeah. But there was definitely a learning curve, a big learning curve, which I think was the issue with a lot of people. A lot of people didn't appreciate or like the learning curve.
Right. Well, you know, the Steam remake, it
There's a
tried to
Steam
fix.
remake?
Oh my god, yeah, I
Oh,
have.
God.
So if you ever, are we Steam friends?
We should be.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, if you ever look at my Steam profile, I think I have like 280 hours logged of Final Fantasy VIII, and I'm only on the third disc because I am a huge fan of Triple Triad, and I would spend hours just playing it. But in the Steam remake, I learned that they have a mode where at the very beginning of the game, if you want, and it comes built into the remake, you can just, all of your characters come at level 99 with maxed out stats. You can get
Oh.
every magic, because some people want to play it just for the story
I loved
elements.
Balamgard.
They
Yeah.
don't actually want to play the game for the
Balamgard
gameplay.
is one of my
They just want to
favorite Final
enjoy
Fantasy
it.
locations.
Balam Garden?
Yeah.
Balam was pretty cool. I mean, I like the idea of
But I like that way.
essentially a giant college university that ups and turns into a battleship. And then engages with other college universities. I mean, really only engages with one because poor Travia got nuked, right away.
Mm-hmm.
But so Final
I need to
Fantasy
go
VIII was
back
a
and
good
read
game.
on
But
that story, 'cause it's been a while.
I mean, I want to dive into the real classics that some people don't even know exist.
Oh jeez.
Like
Well, that's not a real classic. That's like an indie or an underground classic.
what, Final Fantasy
Oh.
VIII? Absolutely not. That was
No.
mainstream.
No, that's not what I meant. I mean, you
Uh-oh.
said you wanted to dive into more obscure titles.
Right. I'm saying like I wanted to like break away from the mainstream things and talk about like Ehrgeiz because
Okay.
I love Ehrgeiz. Have I ever told you about
So
Ehrgeiz?
okay, that's what I mean as far as like indie or underground because I
Right,
I
like the
probably
Wild
won't know
West of
any
gaming in the
these.
90s was that they were
Right.
doing things like this.
What the heck is Ehrgeiz?
Oh my god. So we have to I'm going to bring it in one day and we can play it just so you can see. So Ehrgeiz I think came out in 97. And when that came out it was look it up. I'm sorry, it's Ehrgeiz. It's probably completely spelled wrong, but
What is it?
Ehrgeiz. Oh wow. I just mixed up the E and the I. Not bad. So Ehrgeiz came out during the era when fighting games were really
Oh.
big. Like people were getting into Tekken and
So
Soul
not-
Calibur. I'm
not
sorry, Soul
Masters-
Blade at this point. Or
Not
Soul
Masters
Edge.
of Terrascasi.
What's that?
Not Star Wars Masters of Terrascasi.
Sorry. So it was a fighting game similar
Which they talk
to.
about in Solo, by the way.
Oh, do they?
Yeah.
I have yet to see that still.
The love interest is a master of Terrascasi.
Oh. Well, so on this. This came out during the time when like Soul Edge / Soul Blade was big. Tekken was still like a thing that people really loved. Not that they don't love it now, but like
Oh, yeah,
when
I love
Tekken 2
arcade
came out
Tekken.
and people were like, yeah. So this entire game it's a fighting game that incorporates Final Fantasy characters into it in a Tekken-like setting. There were 3 parts to the game. You had this element, which was the Tekken combat engine with like Final Fantasy characters and a slew of other original characters. You had another game, which was where you just did mini games. It was just a game of mini games.
Oh.
And you had the third part of the game where it was a dungeon adventure where you played as 2 characters,
Really?
both what are they? Archaeologists. And they go into this dungeon, and it also used RPG like elements in that it was kind of like Parasite Eve, but instead of it being turn-based combat, you just ran around and you tried to not die. Like it was active combat.
That's interesting.
And a lot of the items used in the game, like you equipped a materia, you equipped classic Final Fantasy VII era weaponry, among other things. And you essentially scaled this dungeon in this alternate universe that I guess you fall into when you're exploring the ruins. And it was such a creatively fun game. And there's a bit of a cult status surrounding it. So I don't think I can get it as easily anymore. I still have my copy, but, I had it when I was 10. And as such, it could be in better shape. So I would like to buy this if given the chance again. But I'm going to bring in the copy I do have, and we can play it one day just so you can get a feel for it. But yeah, other great classics that came out in that time, other than Ehrgeiz, you had Soul Edge / Soul Blade, depending on if you had a home release or an arcade version. Metal Gear. Oh my god. Metal Gear Solid. It changed. That changed
we could do
everything.
a whole episode about that.
Yeah.
Metal Gear Solid did change everything.
I think we talk about it at least once
Stairwell,
per episode that I'm
The
on.
Tower.
Stealth.
Although it was pretty
Bandana.
obnoxious. Yeah, although it was pretty obnoxious. And there's another YouTuber who talks about this. Who's running up the stairs in the tower and trying to shoot at the genome soldiers that are running after you. And like you're trying to point up and it's like you're pointing up and it's not working and you're pointing behind you.
Yeah, unless you were in
and
first person. Actually, could you
have
do
to be-
first person
no, you
shooting in
couldn't.
MG as well?
No.
You couldn't. That came later. Right.
Mm.
Yeah, you just kind of ran around in a circle, like
Yeah. You have to be at
wasting your clip.
you have to be at exactly the right angle, and I don't know. I'm just really excited for the Resident Evil 2 remake. Because
Let's hope they don't use the same controls.
Right, seeing the RCPD and the City Hall and all the and the statue
Mhm.
of Lady Justice. Oh my God! Seeing those images, you saw the trailer, right?
I have not. You'll have to show me when we get out of here.
Okay. Yeah, you gotta watch the Resident Evil 2 trailer. We go over it in the last episode,
Oh.
011.
I'll have to check it out. Or I'll have to listen and
It's
hear
not up
more
yet. We're gonna put it up.
when it comes out.
Yes.
Oh my god, we are over.
Yeah. So I think we've pretty much Come on, is there one more PS2? I think we've covered all. The
Oh no,
major
there
PS2
no
games.
there are so many PS1 games we could touch on. I mean
PS1.
we didn't even
not PS2.
touch games like Final Fantasy Tactics or Tactics Ogre.
I never played Tactics.
You're lost.
I never played Tactics.
Such a good game. Such a like once again
I played
another
a mod on
example of
Newgrounds, but-
game devs breaking into
Or
some
indie
really
mod.
unique elements that honestly could be replicated again and made so future people can enjoy it.
I'm just
mean,
glad we get to talk about DINO CRISIS.
DINO CRISIS
That was
and
the big- and
Parasite Eve.
Eve, yes. DINO CRISIS, Parasite Eve, Resident Evil 2,
Soul Reaver,
Final Fantasy, yes, Soul Reaver, Final
Brave
Fantasy
Fencer
VII.
Musashi,
Oh, Soul Reaver, yes, Soul Reaver.
Soul Reaver.
That was another one. I played a decent amount of that. We all used to go to each other's houses and play video games.
Soul Reaver used
That was an amazing game. I
Soul
played
Reaver-
a fair amount of that, but never finished it.
If I recall, Soul Reaver did use the Tomb Raider engine.
Good call with Soul Reaver.
It was a
Yeah,
good
if
one.
you don't know what Soul Reaver is, go look it up because you're missing out. They should make a. Do you think they should make a remake of that? Soul Reaver was
They're
great.
still making Soul Reaver games.
Are they?
The series is still going on.
When's
I
the
mean,
last one?
now the primary character is focused on Cain and not on Raziel. But
Razia, yeah, that's the one
I
that
think the most recent one was another Cain-based game. I have this issue with games that tend to keep making newer
Oh, yeah.
and
There we
newer.
Steam.
Oh yeah, you can get it on Steam. I have an issue
First one
with
on
certain
Steam.
games that keep going though in their series because you eventually reach a point where you either do it well and it all fits nicely in a beautiful little package with a nice bow, or you do something terrible like you come out with the third game in the Parasite Eve series, which is completely terrible and disconnected from everything
DINO
and
CRISIS
just
2 was
destroyed
good,
the
wasn't as good as
series.
the first one.
But I feel the same about Soul Reaver. I worry that if they keep going, they're going to like destroy the series.
I didn't
because
even
they're
know
just
there was
gonna-
another one after Legacy of Kain.
Nope, I think they had there was one after that, like a continuation of that one. I think there were two after that focused just on Cain as a character. And I'm pretty sure there's one in development now, another one.
Ape Escape was good.
Yeah, I was just thinking of Ape Escape.
Were you really?
Yeah,
Great
because Ape
minds.
Escape has they incorporate that in MGS3, a little throwback to that.
Oh, that's right, they do. Oh, I totally forgot about that.
Ape Escape is a fun
Ape
one.
Escape was the best.
But
Tony
now we're getting
Hawk's
into the
Pro
cutesy
Skater.
titles too.
Yes, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater.
Oh god, I played so many games.
How many
with
hours
that.
did you spend just exploring?
Oh, so many.
Yeah.
I had to
Trying
play.
to get the bonus
What was your favorite
power-ups, the
character?
tapes.
Did you have one, or did you play a custom?
I can't remember. It's been so long. I never
Officer
really got into
Dick.
skating. Bam, I know. No, Bam Margera wasn't around then. Dude.
They had a game like that. I remember it was actually a
I
demo.
just used Tony Hawk. The default, whatever. Default character.
I mean, I feel most people played with Tony Hawk, but like Officer Dick was just one of those like running gag joke characters that, you know, once you had it, you just played as him. But I think in Tony Hawk 2, they had a demo for a bicycle-based game. I can't remember who the big name on that game was though, because clearly wasn't big enough to keep it floating. But no, that's a good one too. And now we're getting into like some of the more like
What was the band that did the 99 Luft Balloons cover? That was in.
Oh, Nina? No, Nina was the
No,
one who
no.
actually did 99
the
Love
punk
Balloons.
band.
Oh god, I'm drawing a blank. I don't
They
know.
had the famous song, and it's just been so long.
Don't forget Crash Bandicoot, Spyro the Dragon.
I never played Spyro. But
Shame. Well, Spyro is another
Crash
example.
Bandicoot was pretty good. I think that's another game I played the demo of.
Right. Oh, Twisted Metal. But Spyro is another example of a game that has gone completely off kilter, and I'm very afraid to see what happens because Spyro eventually became like
Goldfinger. I would have never.
oh, Goldfinger.
Goldfinger, yeah. Goldfinger as made famous by Tony Hawk's Pro Skater.
Hey, I happen to like Goldfinger before that because
So-
I grew up with brothers who listened to music in the 90s.
Goldfinger was always it was always sad. I mean, it's all right.
What
So
did
Crash
Spyro
Bandicoot,
turn into?
Spyro.
I'm drawing a blank. No, Spyro turned into this series that kids are really into right now, where you play as a variety of different anthropomorphic characters. If I told you, you'll be mortified. But that's what happened to Spyro.
Digimon?
No. Oh, also, that's a good one. It's a good one. Digimon World 1 came out in the 90s.
Oh,
That game was great.
some of the original Monster Hunters too. But were those Japan only releases, or what was
Monster
there one
Hunter?
for PS1?
No, you can. There was a Monster Hunter game for PS1.
Okay, I mean Monster Hunter World was amazing.
Mm.
I refuse to trade it in because I know they're going to come out with it. I need to catch up on some of the DLC. But
Gran Turismo.
You know, I did spend a lot of time
Jet
at friends' houses. Huh?
Jet Moto.
Oh.
That was a good one, too.
I was going to say playing Twisted Metal.
Twisted Metal.
That was a game you could just let out all of your frustration and angst.
I love that game to this day, but I stopped paying attention to the story.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want the story to,
There's a story?
Yeah, I mean, technically, depending on the game, the story is totally different. Also, depending on who you play as, I guess, changes up the lore. I know, technically, Marcus Kane, who did Roadkill, in the second Twisted Metal, it's all in his head. Everything that happened is just in his head, and he's in a hospital.
We're getting into existential conversation now, so I feel like we should wrap up before we get into it. I know it's not PlayStation, but we should wrap up before we start talking about GoldenEye. Because
GoldenEye! Oh, now we're talking about bad controls.
Sacred cows. Why
is it so sacred?
Somehow I find a way to mention that every episode. Every episode that we do, somehow GoldenEye comes up. This is no exception. So, all-time favorite PS1 retro game.
Impossible. Let me think.
Top three.
Top three? All right.
Top three.
Metal Gear Solid.
Yep.
Final Fantasy Tactics.
Yep.
And...
Is Metal Gear Solid number one?
In no particular order.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I'm basic. Metal Gear Solid, Final Fantasy Tactics. Parasite Eve.
Okay.
Final Fantasy VII is in the top 5, though. I mean, that game, like...
Can you hit the close button?
Oh, yeah. Your phone's about to...
No power. No, 20%. We're fine.
I just realized that people can see me on that camera.
Nobody came in.
They can see me so fidgety.
For some reason, it's a slow Tuesday.
I don't know. I see, like...
2?
Yeah.
That's it.
Hello, Sam and Justine.
I was here with Brooke. It must be Brooke. I don't know.
Right. I'm boring now. I've been on the show 3 times. No one cares about me.
What's wrong with us?
I talk about politics and I rant about video games.
We got like 100 views when Brooke came on. A bunch of likes.
Well, okay. I guess I'll just get good.
Well, it's me. It's obviously me too.
I'm so heartbroken now.
So am I. I'm like, what the hell?
All right, top 3 favorite. You go.
Okay. We have to get Brooke in here to just stand here in the background. No, there's a third mic. Mic.
I'll just grab this one too. Double the.
Brooke comes in. No, but I think you're still number one as far as popularity, though.
I don't know why.
If we're looking strictly at likes and views, I think you're still in the top spot. Hannah McCabe closing in close behind you.
Good.
And then I have to recheck the numbers, but I think it's also you have some popularity to your name as well. You're more of a known.
Why?
Well, I mean, you're in politics. You're in the public. You're a public figure. You have a check mark next to you.
It's all good. Yes, I have the blue check mark. It's true.
You have the blue check mark on Twitter.
No, it's on Facebook. It's on Facebook official.
Oh, Facebook.
Yeah.
Not Twitter?
Well, no, because Twitter pulled the check mark before I had the chance to get it. Because I got Facebook's right after Twitter pulled theirs.
What do you mean Twitter pulled theirs?
They had that whole check mark controversy because of people with check mark accounts using their platform to say some pretty less than desirable and rather problematic content. So Twitter, realizing that like this was kind of not an isolated incident, but something happening mainstream, pulled the verification process for getting a check mark. So now it's very, very difficult to get a check mark on Twitter. But on Facebook, I happen to actually, to get my Facebook check mark, I actually had to meet with people from Facebook.
Really?
It happened by like pure luck.
Yeah.
And then I figured, well, I was there.
So we'll have to talk more about that after.
Did you ever give your top 3?
DINO CRISIS and DINO CRISIS 2 together because it's basically just a continuation of
just say the DINO CRISIS series.
Yeah, the DINO CRISIS. Well, I mean the third one doesn't count. I didn't even know if there was a third one. I think I got confused with Parasite. Okay, just DINO CRISIS 1 and 2. It's Parasite Eve 3 that doesn't count.
I mean, Parasite Eve 3 was dreadful.
So DINO CRISIS 1 and 2. Resident Evil 2. Resident Evil 2.
Oh, right, Resident Evil.
And Silent Hill?
We never even touched about Silent Hill.
The first one scared the insert expletive here out of me.
Sorry, nothing will top Silent Hill 3 for me.
Oh, you know what?
Their rendition of a god at the end being half formed. I
Yeah.
I got into it like the best time to get into a terrible game too, which was like midnight in the middle of the night with no lights on.
So I played 1, 2, 4. I watched everyone play. I watched my friend play through almost all of 3. 3 was the one with Table Daddy, right?
Table Daddy. Yeah, I think that was 3.
That was messed up.
Actually, no. Was Table Daddy 3? I think that might have been 2.
No, 3 was Table Daddy, I think.
Well, who was the main character? Oh yeah, it was 3 then. Yeah, 3 had the girl.
But 2 though will always be like 2 will always be the GOAT, I think.
The GOAT.
Yeah. Because it's just and in 3 they use the main character's fears and PTSD as symbols, and 3 was, I mean, for a lot of people 3 is the GOAT, but I think collectively 2 I think had, because 3 had a lot of, I mean, if you look at 3 had a lot of linear pathways in
Right,
it,
yeah.
if I remember correctly, and 2 had this sort of open, really eerie open element to it. It had the psychological terror, when I'm talking about terrorizing the players, that 4 did. And 4 got a lot of flack because it was supposed to be another game, and they threw the Silent Hill title on it. But as far as sheer psychological terror, graphics-wise, 4 was the only one where I had to put down the controller, get up, and leave, and walk out of my house. Because I was so disturbed by the floating head that fell outside of my window, my apartment window.
Wait, what?
The screaming severed head that slowly floated by my apartment window as I was looking out to see who was parked next door in Silent Hill 4, the room.
Oh, I got like concerned. I'm like, wait, like your actual place of residence had a decapitated head?
That's the thing with the room. No, the Silent Hill 4, the room. No, but 2, just the open element to the puzzles, the sense of urgency to get out of there before Pyramid Head came to sexually assault more of the dolls.
That's right.
Pyramid Head was the most disturbing villain in any video game.
I don't know about that. I wouldn't say the most disturbing, but
well, I mean, dragging that big
yes.
sword, the big butcher's knife, when it turns from
that wasn't scary to me.
Really?
Yeah, Pyramid Head was never scary. He was silly to me. Sorry, like compared to other game villains, like Pyramid Head,
he's just iconic.
He is iconic. I'll give him that. He is a very recognizable character.
I think the internet sort of made him a silly character. With all the funny cosplays.
Well, eventually you get desensitized to pretty much everything.
Right, yeah. So, I mean, now Slender Man is more terrifying than I think.
Oh my god, Slender Man is not terrifying.
You have the psychological immunity to this stuff, then.
I'm just very scarred.
Because I was terrified of The Ring, so I had to get him to leave my
What?
house. Yeah, The Ring scared me too. The fact that she came through the TV. That I don't know. Maybe it's just me.
No. I mean, I do think it's scary. I'm not trying to be like, oh, I'm not afraid of anything.
Integrating technology.
Right. I mean, and also at the time, in fairness, at the time, that horror factor was a lot more like, it's different than if you go back to it now, for a number of reasons. But a lot of that never scared me.
Silent Hill 2, when that siren went off, I literally I almost cried once because the siren, I'm like, I'm not ready. The siren went off, and then the wall started peeling, and I'm like, Pyramid Heads are going to be right around that corner, dragging that big-ass knife, the big-ass butcher sword, the buster sword,
I was thinking that
around the corner, dragging a bunch of mannequins behind him.
The only time that a game actually scared me was Resident Evil 4. And
4?
I'll explain.
Your right hand comes off.
Hold on. Hold on.
Let me say it again. Your right hand comes off.
No. The first time I played Resident Evil 4, I did a 1-day speed run at a friend's house. I have a friend in Charlton who's also involved in municipal business.
Closing thoughts, because we're gonna wrap that.
Right. Okay, then I'll keep it short. So, this is my first time playing RE4. Mm-hmm. I'm at the point where we first meet. Oh my god. The first time we meet the Regenerator. And it's probably...
Oh
my god, stop. It's like 3 a.m. And I'm playing this game. My friend lives in the middle of he's right behind a lake surrounded by woods, and he lived in a room where half of his walls were just glass doors because it was like a converted that kind of room.
Horror was a good mix.
So I'm at the scene where the regenerator comes out.
Which one's the regenerator again?
Regenerator is the terrifying one that just makes the it sounds like someone who can't breathe well noise, and they don't die unless you shoot the parasites out of their body. They have 4 Las Plagas in their body, and the only way to actually stop them is if you get all 4, but you can only see all 4 with the heat sensor scope of a rifle. That one, yeah. They also have the Iron Maiden form with spikes. Yeah, and if they get too close, they just bite you.
Terrifying.
Yeah, so it's 3 a.m.
That's scary.
I'm playing this game. I encounter that. I didn't notice my friend vanished. And right as we get to that point, my friend bangs on the glass window.
Oh, jeez.
And
really?
Yeah, it was terrible. So that was the only time that I was actually hardcore scared from a video game. And it wasn't he didn't help to make it worse, but yeah.
Spoiler alert, I also had to stop and turn the TV off when the second time I had to turn the console off and leave my house. Did you ever do that? When you look into the peephole and there's that stuffed bunny sitting down in the bed.
And you look.
And you look.
And the guy.
And the stuffed bunny is always there in the same position because it's a stuffed bunny.
Right.
And then the 11th time or something that you look through the peephole, just goes be a pervert and spy on your neighbor. That pink stuffed bunny is literally pointing at you.
Oh no, I'm thinking of something else then.
The peephole.
I don't remember that.
And then there was spoiler alert, when you realize that the ghost, the main villain, is buried in your wall.
20
crucified in your wall, mummified and crucified in your wall, and that's why your apartment's haunted.
Good. People wonder why everything's terrible because we grew up with games like this.
Yeah. Yeah, right? So, ESP012, any final thoughts?
No.
Vote yes on 3.
Oh yeah, I guess that's a very
yes on
we're so far from that conversation. This episode ran over by half an hour. Yes, vote yes on 3 if rights and liberties are your cup of tea.
Yes.
And
yes
also
3,
what's that?
I was just saying vote yes on 3, please.
Oh yeah, yes, please.
So we can actually exist in public and use bathrooms in public. Thank you.
Vote yes on
Please,
3.
thank you.
You send me information about Atlantis, and
yes,
I will send you some information about casually great vintage 90s games.
Okay. Awesome. ESP012, Jordan Evans, Retro Gaming, Gobekli Tepe.
Woo.
Political update, vote yes on 3. We out.